to Ghostly.
Is some paranormal evidence really just microclimates? As always, we're your host. I'm Pat.
And I'm Rebecca.
So because of social distancing, we are recording today's episode over Zoom, so please pardon the audio quality. It might not be up to par as what we usually are at. Rebecca, how have you been?
As well as can be, being locked up in my house, but making it. Luckily I'm still working, so that is nice. And recording podcasts, so I guess I have stuff to do. How about you?
Oh man, I've been actually like where a lot of people are slowing down right now. They're like on like a vacation. I've been like working 4 times as much, and also doing all these podcast things for these 2 gentlemen that we are going to be talking to. They are 2 returning guests. We have Nick Mataragas.
Hey.
Nick, how have you been?
Oh, I'm surviving. Cabin fever is definitely set in, but,
right?
It's normal for everyone right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will be playing a clip because Ghostly was on Freak of the Week, and you're the producer of Freak of the Week, right?
Yeah.
Definitely not the host.
Not the host. Never on the show even. It's very strange.
Yeah, actually, he claims to never have met you.
He always is like, who's that?
We met once, like 3 years ago at C2E2, and
Okay.
I told him how much I love him. It was weird. We were wearing the same shirt and everything, but I don't know.
That was
crazy.
Weird.
He's
Yeah.
crazy.
And his hair looked like your hair, too.
Can we not talk about my hair today?
Okay, we won't talk about your hair today. I know you're hair sensitive.
Well,
Yeah.
Hickney is often wearing tinfoil on his head, so
Well,
Yeah,
as
different.
you would expect.
yeah.
And then we have Bob Anderson from Bob After Dark. Bob, how are
Hey,
you?
Bob.
Oh, hey there, everybody. I'm Bob with Bob After Dark.
Yeah.
I feel
Yay.
like if I need an introduction at this point from Ghostly, it's good. I'm okay.
Yeah, this is your 3rd time coming on the show, right?
Yes, and if people listened to your last episode about the Conjuring House, I was mentioned quite
Several
a bit.
times. Yeah.
You're almost gonna catch up with Mondo as far as number of guests. Times.
I know.
Yeah,
my
right.
plan is to actually replace Pat as the house skeptic when the day comes that I become a skeptic.
Okay.
Well, now, Rebecca, you are definitely a believer, right?
Yes.
Nick, you would say that you're probably more of a skeptic than me, right?
I think I would term myself as a hardcore skeptic. Yeah.
Hardcore skeptic. So what am
Wow.
I then?
You're a mild skeptic.
Mild
light.
skeptic. Skeptic. Okay. Now, Bob, would you say that you're more of a believer than Rebecca?
I'd say me and Rebecca are on the same page because me and her both keep like the same logical level.
Oh,
Okay.
that's what you consider at a logical level? Okay. All right.
There's levels to believing, just like there's levels of, in my opinion at least, there's like levels of being a skeptic like you and Nick. There's like the hardcore and then there's skeptic light. I feel like me and Rebecca are on the nice level of believing, and then there's like the true believers that there is no such thing as probable doubt or anything like that. There's no such thing as scientific understanding of what's going on.
Kind of like Hickney over at Freak of the Week.
That guy is on the top scale of believing, and then there's me and Rebecca. That guy, if I sneezed and my tissue came out looking like a Sasquatch, that guy would believe that there was something there.
Yeah, no, he believes in nostril squatch.
Nostril
Nick,
squatch?
before we go on, Nick, I actually got to meet the doc at C2E2. We came to the Paranormal fan meetup, and you look a lot like him.
This is what I hear. I mean, I've only met him the one time, and obviously you never notice yourself. Like, people tell you look like somebody, and you're like, I don't look like that person at all. So I don't get it, but I guess other people see that.
And you kind of look like this Spiro guy that we were watching yesterday on Memoriam Development's page.
Oh, gosh, we found that guy off the street.
Oh,
He
really?
was great, though. He was hilarious. It's out on Facebook, Memoriam Development's page. Everyone should go watch it. He was great.
Well, what does he do?
He's a very bad fortune teller. So he does like tarot readings, and he read somebody's palm. They send him a photo, and like he channels the dead, all the normal psychic things.
He was reading
Wow.
fortunes for celebrities. That was great.
And Andy read one for me. which I really don't like
yes.
my fortune. That was not good. Yeah. All right, so this is going to be a very special episode. I mean, I know today is April Fool's Day, but this is not going to be a prank episode. I thought we would do something different, though. And has anyone ever watched the TV show You Can't Do That on Television?
I'm old enough for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, you probably are not old enough for that, are you?
I've seen it. Thanks for calling me out on my youngsterness, but yes, I've seen it.
Alanis Morissette was on it. That's the claim to fame.
Yeah,
Slime,
so
that they started the sliming.
so on there, they did a thing called the Introduction to the Opposites. And it would start off with something that you wouldn't expect to go one way and actually turn out to go another way. Like the kids would say, I'm not going to do my homework today. And the parents would say, thank God. You know, and that was the introduction to the opposites, you know. So I thought on April 1st, instead of having April Fool's Day, that we do a Skeptic Day, where Rebecca takes all of my roles and I take hers. So I wanted to make this about something that we've had a bit of an inside joke about on the show and off the show, microclimates. So who here believes in microclimates? Yeah.
Hopefully all of us believe
Okay,
that
good,
things
good,
exist. Yes, exactly.
All right,
Yes,
so
I'm
Rebecca.
sorry, we all raised our hands for the audio listeners.
Yeah, exactly. So Rebecca, what do you usually do at this part?
So this is the part we start off the episode with some listener mail.
Oh, okay. Well, this week's listener's mail actually comes from Bob. So he's on here, so I don't have to read it.
So you pawned off the listener mail. I
have.
Pat not only pawned off the listener mail on me, but he pawned the listener mail off of me, off of a fan of mine, for listener mail on my show.
Well, you did post it on Ghostly Society.
You did.
I did, which if you guys aren't on Ghostly Society, you should all be on Ghostly Society. It's one of my favorite like paranormal like Facebook groups that I frequent all the time now. And I post a lot on there, and it's easy for you to be a skeptic or a believer, or if you just have simple questions. I know I'm plugging a group that's not mine, but I help moderate it. So
You do.
Ghostly Society, go check that out.
You and Nick are both moderators on there.
It's great. I mean, I'm a hardcore skeptic, but I feel like everything that gets posted in there is haunted.
Pretty much, yes. Everything that gets posted.
All right, so Bob, you had a very interesting article that you shared with us about Foo Fighters saying that Ghost disrupted recording of one of their new albums.
Yes.
So do you want to go ahead and tell us about that?
I do. So this was actually sent in from one of my fans, James. He wanted my opinion on the Foo Fighters' 10th album, and I was like, what are you talking about? And I guess apparently Ghost nearly ruined it for the Foo Fighters. Now, if you don't know who the Foo Fighters are, they're a band with frontman Dave Grohl, who played in a small band called Nirvana. I don't know if you guys ever heard of them.
Nirvana?
Okay. They were big in a decade called the 90s. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember much of the
Barely.
90s,
Yeah,
actually, to tell you the
no.
truth.
I remember Pearl Jam.
That was one. I remember that.
Nick, don't even start with that today.
All right, so the Foo Fighters reportedly, I'm going to be reading this word from the Rolling Stone article. There is a bit of, how do I put it, some derogatory comments and a lot of family explicit talk, so I'm just going to skip over those words, so excuse me if there sounds like there's blanks in between sentences. But the Foo Fighters reportedly faced something entirely new while making their upcoming 10th album, Ghosts. Dave Grohl recently told Mojo that the house in Encino, California, a 40s construction, where they recorded had a sinister past. When we walked into the home in Encino, I knew the vibes. Encino. Thank you. My apologies.
Oh man, it's the age thing. Okay.
There was a Brendan Fraser movie called Encino.
Because hashtag we are all Brendan Fraser.
Oh boy,
So
guys! Look, in true fashion, this wouldn't be a ghostly thing with me if I didn't mispronounce something.
Yeah,
Easter
like the
Island
Easter
Massacre.
Island. Yeah.
All right, I knew the vibes were definitely off, but the sound was on. Grohl said, according to NME. We started working there, and it wasn't long before things started happening. We would come back to the studio the next day, and all of our guitars would be detuned. Or we'd have settings put up on the board, and they would have gone back to zero. we would open up a Pro Tools sessions and the tracks would be missing. And there were some tracks put on there that we didn't put in there at all. Just weird open mic noises. Nobody playing an instrument or anything like that, just an open mic recording a room. And we'd be zero on the sounds within that. And we didn't hear any voices or anything decipherable, but something was happening. The group attempted to document the paranormal phenomena with a Nest Cam to take video of the studio when they weren't there. We started things on a Nest Cam we couldn't explain, Gruhl said. So he took it home. He took it to the homeowner who detailed the house's illustrious past. But Gruhl won't say what he found out. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the landlord because he's trying to sell the place, he said. So I can't give away what happened there, but in the past couple of occurrences over a short period of time made us finish the album as quickly as we could. And lo and behold, they were actually able to finish the album. And one of the songs on the album actually features a riff that Gruhl has been referring to for the past 25 years. So he's been refining this riff for a while.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
that's the story of how Dave Grohl and the rest of the Foo Fighter became Ghostbusters.
I love that Dave Grohl is a believer. Yay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the only musician out of all of us. Well,
so-
Nick, what do you play?
I play the kazoo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm the only
played
musician out of all of us.
before in my life.
But
Well, I'm
I find-
prepared for a debate on this, but
Wait, no, I was just saying, well, this is not, we don't debate the listener
no,
mail,
I know, but
remember?
I'm waiting for Pat to come out and say something, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, in my experience, my guitar needs to be tuned every single day. So I'm just saying, you know, that's just my thought on the matter. But I'm not gonna debate it. I'm just gonna let it be, let
That's
it
fair.
soak in there, and then we go right to the ghost story, right?
No, you always want to skip this part. In fact,
Oh.
you have to read this part this time.
Oh, I don't want to. This is the hard part for me.
Yeah, he really tried to get out of this, guys. He was like, I just don't know how to do it. Like I could like he couldn't do the math, quote unquote, you know. So I was like, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do the math. I'll figure out the percentages for you.
Yeah, so Rebecca did the math on this one. So just so you know.
Ah, okay.
So in our last episode, we talked about The Conjuring, right? And it was 60-40. So now time for the ghost story.
What was the 60? What was the 40?
One of them was yes, one of them was no. I mean, it's, you know, that's how that works.
Do I have to read the polls this time?
No, yeah, so believers, it was 60%, skeptics, 40%. So, I mean, but I actually think we did a pretty good job getting to 40%. I mean, I really thought it would be a landslide for that one.
Pat, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many episodes have you won?
I didn't put that on a spreadsheet. I had one for a while, but then I stopped because it made me cry.
It's probably like 4 or 5, maybe.
The Clown
something like
Hotel, man. That was one of the few I
That
ever
was
voted no
one.
on.
It
I
has
used to win
happened.
them all in the beginning before Rebecca started doing the polls. As soon as she started posting the polls, then I started losing.
Yeah.
I think it's a lack of skeptic voter turnout is what it is.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay.
But that one was pretty close, though, I would say. So I'm pretty happy with that.
All right.
So I do have a ghost story. So Rebecca, you cannot talk during this story.
No, we cannot talk during the story. I want you to set the mood.
All right. So here goes. And this is a true story, by the way. Not like Rebecca's ghost stories. I did not make this up. I didn't add to it. It isn't taken from another story. This is a true story, 100%.
Okay.
You and your friend decide to go to St. James at Sag Bridge Catholic Church one night. All of your friends have nicknamed it Monk's Castle. They say that if you go there late at night, the monks will come out and force you to leave, or they'll hold you until the police arrive and arrest you for trespassing. It's an autumn day, but it's not all that windy. It's eerily calm, actually. And you and your friend pull the car over on the side of Archer Avenue, known for being the most haunted road in the Midwest, at least. It's so dark that you can only see a single light that illuminates the entrance to the church's gray and foggy grounds. You both enter slowly, so not to be seen by the monk. There's a steep incline as you go up the hill that eventually leads to where the monks live. You both are terrified to be there, but you need to be able to tell your friends that you accomplished going there at night. To the right, there is a church. It is smaller than you had imagined, but you keep going up the hill, for this is not why you came here. Finally, to the left, you see a cross on a small pillar. The cross glows a haunting blue from the way the moonlight hits it. This is it. The cemetery at Monk's Castle. You slowly start moving into the cemetery, trying your best to keep on the gravel pathway. Headstones that look ancient surround you. You become slightly confused by which direction you are facing, and then you realize that you're no longer on the gravel pathway. You move to your left, and suddenly the cold hits you. It comes on like nothing you've ever experienced. The drop in temperature is at least 15 degrees from 2 steps before. Is this the cold they tell you that you feel when ghosts are present? Your friend trips on a headstone, and with that, with the noise, the lights in the monk's living quarters go on. You grab your friend and start running as fast as you ever have. You hear a door open and someone yell something. You hear footsteps behind you as you make your way to the entrance again, but you don't stop. You run faster because you see the car, now that your eyes are more adjusted to the dark. You make it back to the car as you see a figure emerge in the entrance light. You speed off, not saying anything for at least 15 minutes. You're safe for now.
Ooh.
That's the skeptic story there.
All right. Now, are you going to bring this up later for us to debate?
Yeah, I am going to use that as my 4th piece of evidence.
Okay, so everyone just, have
But
that in your mind.
I will tell you that this was me.
Okay.
Story.
Mm.
So
Were you
does
the one
that
that
change
tripped over the
anything for you
headstone?
guys? No, it was my friend.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I will not name because I have not asked the person if I can say that. And no, it's not Mondo.
I was thinking that the whole time. I'm like, is this Mondo?
No, it wasn't Mondo. No, I don't think I ever went there with Mondo, actually.
Well, I think we'll definitely do a Monk's Castle episode at some point for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right, so maybe we should go ahead and take a break before Rebecca does the history.
Ooh.
Yeah. See you in a second.
Hey, Ghostly Society, it's Rebecca. How you doing? I hope Ghostly is bringing a little joy to your life. Want to know a way you can spread that joy into all of your life? Buy some Ghostly gear. We've got Ghostly shirts, sweatshirts, even cute little onesies. We even have hashtag Team Believer. And, well, I guess hashtag Team Skeptic too. Visit ghostlypodcast.com/store to get your Ghostly merchandise today. ghostlypodcast.com/store.
All right, we're back. You guys ready
Yeah.
for some history? Well, it's
Yep.
not really going to be so much a history today as it's going to be a science lesson.
But wait, we could talk during this, right?
This you can talk during. Yes,
You're not
I
going to
encourage
make
all
me
of
be
you.
silent. Okay.
No, you don't need to be silent. In fact, I'm actually going to start with letting you guys talk. So we're going to learn about microclimates today.
Ooh,
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we're talking about. To start, I thought I'd ask the group, what are examples of microclimates that you've experienced? We'll get to the science of it in a minute, but I'm guessing that most of us can think of some examples that we've experienced. So, Bob, why don't you start us off? Can you think of a...
Never. Every time I come across one of those cold spots, it's always a ghost.
All right, Hickney.
No.
Joking aside, there's been times when I've like walked through the house and I'll just randomly start getting hot, which would be the complete opposite of a cold spot.
Mhm.
So I would just randomly start going through and I would start feeling like hotter as things go on. Just that would be ventilation issues or, you know, things that go up versus down. And I do know microclimates can work either way. So
Yes,
Okay.
they can.
most of mine have always been more, I don't want to say the word like heat stricken, but I would just go in and I would automatically become more like warmer from
Okay.
one to the next.
Pat, how about you? What's an example of one you?
Well, besides the story I just told, the
Mhm.
skeptic story, I would say San Francisco, when I've been there, there is a lot of microclimates. You can go from like one house to the next, and it is like 15 degrees difference. So, what about you, Nick?
Well, I think you made a good point there with San Francisco. I don't look it, but I like to hike, and so when you're on the trail, sometimes you hit cooler or warmer spots, and I think a lot of it has to do with changes in elevation. So if there's a dip in the trail or whatever, it changes that temperature, that feel. Also, when there's weather fronts coming in,
Mhm.
sometimes pockets of that front will hit you before the rest of it, and so that can actually be part of it as well. I've had that experience as well.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Good. And for me, I was going to mention, just because we are Chicago people, that we are by a lake. So when you are downtown Chicago, the temperature is often very different than it is outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
And that is often because of the lake. So it's interesting in the winter, for at least the first half of the winter, it's warmer in the city because the warm air from the lake, which is still warm from the summer, is coming into the city, but then it flips, and in the summer at the beginning it's colder in the city because the water is colder, so then that affects the way that the city feels.
Yeah. So my work is actually moving right next to the lake. I mean, I will be on the lake.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of nervous about that because I don't like to be too hot and I don't like to be too cold. So it's
Well,
got its extremes.
it does. It definitely does. There's wind with that too, and all sorts of things. So, all right. So hopefully that gives us all a general understanding of what microclimates are. But I did want to dive a little deeper into the word itself and the science, and then maybe give some of those examples that we think about. So my sources for this episode are Wikipedia, but also Encyclopedia Britannica, the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary.
Oh, the OED.
The OED.
Yeah, you know me.
You know, if you're looking for, honestly, if you're looking for a really interesting book to read in your quarantine,
It's a dictionary.
It's a dictionary.
no, it's called The Professor and the Madman. It's about the creation of the dictionary. It was invented by a crazy man who killed people. So super interesting.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah.
It's actually a really interesting book. But anyways, and then there's some really interesting YouTube videos that I found that I'm, of course, gonna definitely put in all the show notes for everybody. If you're a gardener, and it seems like pretty soon we're all gonna be gardeners because we're just gonna be too bored and have to go outside.
Yeah.
You'll definitely want to check these out because there's some interesting stuff there. Okay, so looking at the word, well, obviously microclimates themselves have existed since ever. The term itself is not. So now Wikipedia says the term originated in the 1950s, but a quick look at the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, says
I love that
it's,
you abbreviate that.
well,
That you use it so much that you have to abbreviate
I'm an English
it.
teacher. That's what we call it. Says that its first use was in 1925. So it was in a journal about fungus.
Oh, I
which
don't like fungus.
Kind of makes sense, though, if you think about it, because, you know, fungus grows where things are humid or on the side of a tree where the wind hits or doesn't hit. I don't know all the science about the fungus, but it makes sense to me that they would be interested in microclimates. It is a noun, and it falls in the study of meteorology and ecology.
So wait, we can't use this as a verb, like microclimating?
Right. So I guess you could. English works that way. That way, but
Okay.
so the actual official definition is the climate of a small or restricted area or of the immediate surroundings of an organism or object of interest, especially where this differs from the climate generally. To me, that is one of those definitions that I would need to read like 5 times, and I would still struggle to kind of put it together. But basically, a microclimate is when the climate of an area is different than the regular climate around it. Make sense?
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so I think we've kind of already started with some of these, but there are 6 main things that can cause a microclimate. So there's the sun, obviously,
One.
right?
One.
One. And the way we think about it with the sun is the solar aspect. So where it is in the sky and how close it is to the earth can definitely affect things at different times. And I'll give some examples of that later on. The second one, Nick already
2.
mentioned. 2 is topography, which is hills, caves, right, slopes. So I found an example out there: south-facing slopes in the northern hemisphere and north-facing slopes in the southern hemisphere are exposed to more direct sunlight than opposite slopes are, and therefore warmer for longer periods of time. So depending on which side of the hill you're on. So giving the slope a warmer microclimate than the areas around the slope.
Sounds like a bunch of science there.
I know, so much science. This is very nerdy for me. I love everything about doing this. I haven't lectured in a while, so sorry. The lowest area of a glen may sometimes frost sooner, right? So like if you look out, like if you're staying somewhere and there's a hill, right? And if you look down at the bottom of the hill, that part of that valley, right, might freeze over sooner than the higher elevations. And then because the cold air sinks, right, a dying breeze may not reach down to the bottom level. The humidity lingers, precipitates, and freezes. So topography is a big one. Soils, so the type of soil found in an area. Three. Found in an area can also affect microclimates. So soils that are heavy in clay can almost be like pavement. We didn't talk about with the cities, but we will. But that can kind of reflect back, right, the sun and change the ground temperature. Or I didn't realize this: if soil has many air pockets, then the heat could be trapped underneath the topsoil, resulting in more frost on the soil. Yeah. All right, 4.
4.
Water bodies. So I already talked about Lake Michigan, right? So anytime we've got a body of water, that could absolutely cause microclimates around it. 5. Built structures. So even a house can cause microclimates. I think a simple way to think about that would just be the shade that we get from a structure certainly can cause temperature to be lower in that area than around it. And certainly urban areas with skyscrapers and tall buildings have a lot of microclimates from those. All right, last one. 6.
6 things.
6 things.
Oh, sorry.
Vegetation. So trees, plants, trees certainly, again, with shade, I mean, on a very basic level, but certainly also depending on what kind of plants they are, they might release more humidity or take up more sunlight. There's a lot of things that can happen with vegetation. So how are we doing so far?
So far, I'm good.
All right. Any comments, questions, thoughts?
I'm going to win this one, so I'm excited.
All right, I think the most interesting thing that I learned while researching microclimates is how they're often either done on purpose or used purposely. So one video that I watched was from an urban farmer. His name is Curtis Stone.
Curtis Stone, yeah.
The video's from a few years ago, but his YouTube channel is pretty awesome. Like I said, I'll definitely put a link out to it because he shows you how you can basically like make money from planting in your yard. Like
I like money.
Yeah, right. And then you sell it at like farmers markets or whatever. So, but anyways, he talks about how he uses the sun aspect and his neighbor's house. Like he plants on his neighbor's house.
Wait, he plants on his neighbor's house?
Sorry. No, at his neighbor's yard. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But he uses it to actually create a warmer climate for one of his summer squash beds. So it's like there's just the way that it traps the heat or whatever. And then on another video from Oregon State, they talked about how you can use vegetation to understand the microclimate or just the, kind of help you make decisions about what you're going to do in an area. So he talked about if a hill has a certain type of flower on it, that means it's more likely to have fires. So there's like these
What's
flowers.
A fire flower?
Yeah, it's a flower that does.
You played Mario Brothers?
Well, it's funny you asked that, Pat. I'm just about to tell you.
All right, good.
These flowers do really well when they periodically experience fires, right? Like we've kind of heard about that, like controlled burns,
Wow.
right? Like that actually can help the ground and everything. So if you find these flowers growing on a hill, especially one that faces the wind, like blowing on it, then you know that there's probably a lot of fires that happen. And so you should not build a house on top of that hill because it's very likely going to have a forest fire or something on it.
Wow,
Super
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I like learning about microclimates.
Good. I'm glad you do because I'm going to use it a lot.
Okay. I mean, nothing so far, by the way, has changed my beliefs of things that happen, but I mean, I'm just.
Oh, I'm going to.
All right. So now, lastly, we already talked about some of the famous ones, but I just wanted to bring up some well-known microclimates. Pat brought up San Francisco, right? Coastal
Yes.
areas are the most likely to have microclimates because the ocean, obviously, huge body of water, and it's going to affect everything around it. And San Francisco, I think, is one of the most well-known areas just because it kind of does it have like a isthmus or like a island? You know, it kind of goes out into the water
I
a
think
little
it
bit.
dips down too. I
So
think it's, yeah.
there's a ton of elevation issue, you know, topography
Yeah.
that we talked about. So it'll, in general, the city kind of stays a similar temperature, and it's usually it's usually cooler than what's around it. So like I used to stay with a friend out like an hour outside of San Francisco, and it was always warmer there than in the city. And then they'll get the fog, right, and kind of just different microclimates basically throughout the city. And then another one that I read about that I thought was interesting was Chesapeake Bay has a subtropical microclimate. So Chesapeake Bay, right, is like on the eastern seaboard, right, kind of up there.
Yes.
So it's most notable for its mild climatic effects on the area east and west of the lowlands of Maryland, and I don't even know what Delmarva is, but I just
Delmarva, yeah.
This is on Wikipedia. Having over 64,000 square miles of water, which is a mix of fresh and salt water, creates a higher level of humidity and heat in the spring and summer months. An example of this effect is the survival of tropical palm trees and plants like water hyacinths in the area. So if you go to Chesapeake Bay, you can find palm trees in certain areas.
I didn't know that.
Crazy. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about city urban areas just in general often have microclimates, a lot of times unintended. So from Urban Hub, undesirable urban microclimates are a global phenomenon. In Atlanta, the number of thunderstorms rises in line with increases in road traffic. In the 1950s, London's naturally occurring fog became denser, more polluted by the increase in car traffic and coal-fired energy emissions. So in other words, man-made things can change the climate as well. The microclimate most people think about is the urban heat island. So like, you know,
Of course, that's what I think of when I think of microclimates.
Well, when we think of cities, right, it's not just about the buildings, but it's actually the asphalt and the sidewalks. The fact that there's no green reflects the sun. And so actually can make things hotter in general than outside of a city. So in Melbourne, the temperature is higher than the surrounding less urbanized areas. The average temperatures in Tokyo have risen by 3 degrees Celsius over the past century, while only rising 1 degree Celsius for the country as a whole. Wow. So they definitely affect the way air moves, and they cost us a lot of money. Not to get on a little bit of an environmental high horse, but because it's hotter in the city, it costs more money to make people to use air conditioning and make things cooler.
Makes sense.
You know. Now, I just had one last one that surprised me. We create microclimates.
What? Like me?
Yeah, everybody. So one that they talked about was when we sit for a long time
and
on
record
certain
a podcast.
Surfaces, especially, well, I mean, anywhere, but especially like if you're sitting on plastic or like if you go out to like a ball game or something, what happens when you stand up?
I usually get a little disorientated, maybe a little vertigo. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
My joints creak.
Yeah. What happens to your pants?
Whoa. I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but
I mean...
No, they stick sometimes.
Yeah, they might stick to you. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have a weird wet spot potentially on
Ew.
your pants. So you're kind of, that's why women, we always have to think, are we going to wear
Stop
white
looking at my
pants?
butt, Rebecca. Jeez.
But it's because, when you're sitting, you're creating moisture and heat, and you're creating a microclimate. And they actually study this because they have to be really careful for people that are in wheelchairs.
Oh, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they, obviously aren't getting up, and
There might be like a tornado or something with the microclimate they're creating. Yeah, I mean, it's hot, it's
Okay.
cold, it's like,
I was thinking fungus, but yeah, it's totally
Yeah, I think the
Tornado.
fungus might be. All right. Okay, so that's what I've got. That's what I got. Any
right.
questions or things that you know
Does
about microclimates that I didn't talk about?
does the wind tunnel effect between buildings count as a microclimate then? Like when you're walking?
Yeah,
yeah.
wind definitely plays a part of that. Definitely. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think all of us have spent time enough in Chicago to have felt that one
Oh, yeah.
quite well.
There are times where literally you're walking backwards. I can't move forward because it's.
By the way, that might be some of my evidence. So I'm just saying.
Okay.
All right. So maybe we should give everyone a short break before we get into the debate. You guys good with that?
Sure.
Yes.
Let's do
All
it.
right. See ya in 2 and 2. What?
Hey guys, what I've learned over the last couple years is the key to a really good podcast is two things: getting plenty of Apple Podcast reviews and lots of caffeine. You can help us with both of those. Head over to Apple Podcast, write us a review, and if you feel up to it, you could even buy us a cup of coffee. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/ghostlypodcast, or just go to ghostlypodcast.com and click on the Buy Us Coffee. You can sign up for a membership or a one-time donation to us. It would really be appreciated.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. And now we're going to get into the debate. Rebecca usually presents evidence to us, or to me, and then I have to debate it. But this time, since we're doing the opposite, I'm going to present the evidence to them, and then we can all have a talk about it. So the question of this episode was, I'm scrolling back, is some paranormal evidence really just microclimates? So that's what I am setting out to try to prove. And my first bit of evidence is a past episode of ours, the Iroquois Theater. So one of my first pieces of evidence is the alley outside of what is it called? Nederlander Theater?
Nederlander.
Unst. Anyways, it is in downtown Chicago. This was home of one of the worst theater fires in history, and you can go back and listen to that episode. It's the Iroquois Theater Fire episode, and this all happened on December 30th, 1903. 602 people died in this theater, and most of the people died trying to use the fire escape from the second floor. It appears that the fire escape was not installed because they were rushing to get the place open, and yeah, well, when people
you
go
just
down,
can't help doing the history.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, when people go to this alley, they talk about the cold spots as one of the pieces of evidence that there is paranormal activity there. So this alley that all these people died in is a heavy urban area where brick, concrete, and asphalt are located. Those are all things that we talked about just a second ago. It's also in between two buildings that cast off a lot of shade.
They are so rude. It's amazing.
And this is the perfect location for a microclimate. Also, I wanted to bring up that a person that is responsible for first saying that the place is haunted has actually come out and said that she made it up. She shall remain nameless for this episode, though. because I have not talked to her about coming clean with this on Ghostly.
Though she also said that since then, there's actually been quite a bit of stuff that's happened. She just didn't know that it was there.
Okay, well, maybe it's because now people believe it's haunted. So, anyways, Rebecca, so what would you say about this?
Oh, you want me to start?
Yes.
Okay.
You're the first one.
All right. Well, so for me, this is one where the alley itself is all the same, right? As far as there's the brick, concrete, it's between buildings. So to me, the microclimate is the whole area. So if within this microclimate there are areas that are different, that's not, to me, that means something. I mean, it's not like I mean, if you were saying, well, while I'm in the alley it's cold and when I leave the alley it's not cold, I would be like, yeah, that's a microclimate. But if within the microclimate you feel something different, I think that could mean something.
But there is a lot of shade, though, in that one spot because of the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nick, what would you say?
I would posit that you can have microclimates within microclimates, and I've been down the alley, and there are nooks and crannies and doors and fire escapes, all that can create different levels of shade. So if you're walking through there, it can dip down a little bit or go back up a little bit, depending on loading docks or fire escapes or whatever can add to that shade.
All right. So, lastly, but not leastly, Bob.
Leastly. I'm with this one. This is a tough call for me because I'm very well of the story that you're referring to about the whole person made it up thing. And I'm very much involved. I've been down that alley too. And I can tell you that there's a lot going on there that can cause extra bits of shade, that can cause extra bits of cold spots, but I'm here to defend it. So I'm with Rebecca in this case.
You don't have to, though.
No, but that's
Don't have to.
we're not because I'm 100% in agreement with Rebecca. Because how small can a microclimate be?
Right. Well, it can be
it
pretty
could be
small.
underneath the person in a wheelchair.
The term is
What I'm
micro.
saying, stop and listen to me. Stop. That's a spots of cold, right? Real small spots of cold, and they're sporadic, or it's not fixated in one spot. If the whole alley is a little cooler all the time because of all this stuff going on around it, right? If the alley they're not changing anything, and if there's not like different construction going on above or around it, why is it that there's only certain spots that move? The microclimate should be asphyxiated at all times in the same spot, minus wind patterns and weather changes. But the fact that they're catching it here and there sporadically throughout the alley, and it's not all the same spot, that's where I'm standing with.
Well, I would argue that the sun moves, and that Earth is actually a sphere. And
Spear?
A sphere.
Yeah. A sphere that rotates around. It's not flat,
Oh,
so,
are you sure?
Yeah, so that's how that happens, actually. So how are we going to rate this? Rebecca, what is your rating?
Okay.
So zero being that the evidence, you don't believe it at all. 10 being absolutely, it's 100% true.
I'm going to give this one a 7. I give this one a 7. I'm pretty strong on it because I do feel that there's a time thing.
Wait, that means that you're going towards my side with this.
Well, I do think that there's sometimes that when people are in that alley and they're feeling something, that it's probably shade or the wind or something. But I absolutely think a lot of the tours go there at night. So the sun is not a factor. And if I'm standing in the same place and I feel a cold spot and the person next to me doesn't, like, I can't totally dismiss that. I can't.
But like, okay, so you're saying that you pretty much believe all of my evidence here.
No.
Oh, okay, so then you would go at 3 then, or a 2.
Wait,
This is
now I'm
opposite.
confused.
It's the opposite,
Oh, I'm
remember?
so sorry. You know what?
Yeah.
You talked and I didn't pay attention. But you gave the ratings. I'm sorry. I just assumed they were the same as we always do.
Whoa.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
So no, that's a 3. That's a 3 then. Yes.
All right. Nick, how would
10.
you 10? Wow. Wow. Okay, that was fast too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Bob, how would you respond to this?
3 or 4, maybe
3 or 4? Well,
3.5. Let's go 3.5.
3.5.
Nice.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 9 because I think I did a good job.
Okay.
So,
Well, all right then.
yeah. Okay. So my next bit of evidence is not a previous ghostly episode, although it may be at some time.
Mm.
It's about
Spoilers.
the ghost of William Rowe. William Rowe was hanged publicly outside of the Napa Valley Courthouse. Now, it had some major renovation over the years, but many people claim to feel a cold spot at the exact spot where William Rowe was hanged, including some construction workers and an electrician. At first, this went unreported because it was all men, and men don't like to talk about their feelings. But they believe that they felt the presence of a ghost because of the cold spot. And I just want to point out that this is in California, which is known for having a lot of microclimates. By the way, I found this ghost story on the NapaValleyRegister.com. So, what would you say, Rebecca?
So I would say that it means something to me that it's only in one certain spot, a spot where something happened that was maybe could cause a lot of energy out there, spiritual energy. And the fact that these are people that wouldn't normally believe these things, right? Like construction workers, electricians, and it's that, again, I go back to this when it's so many people that have the same experience. It's harder for me to dismiss it. Then it wasn't just like one person who's like, I felt cold when I was here, so therefore they're spirits. It's a lot of people, and people that don't particularly want to talk about those things because they're afraid. So the fact that they say something, I don't know, that it's hard for me to dismiss that. But I
Okay.
haven't seen a picture of the area, so that does make it trickier to gauge microclimate possibility.
It is tricky. Speaking of tricky, Nick, do you want to respond to this?
Yeah, I do actually. A couple things. Construction workers and electricians can't be skeptics.
They could be.
Are
Can be.
have to be skeptics? I mean, because it was kind of, you were assuming that they're skeptics.
Well, oftentimes they have that reputation.
I've never heard that reputation before, but okay. My other point is you mentioned in the name Napa Valley. Look, we all know Napa Valley for its wine, and if you know anything about grape growing and winemaking, it's all about microclimates. You grow specific grapes in different spots because it's cooler or warmer. So that means that Napa Valley, in general, is going to be full of microclimates.
Wow. Okay. Bob, how would you respond to this?
I wasn't expecting to be debating some winemaker today, so I gotta prepare myself here. No, that's a good question, and let me catch my thoughts here because the winemaking really threw me through a loop.
Okay.
But this is not happening at a vineyard. By the way.
It's not, and that's what I'm getting at. This isn't happening at a vineyard, and the fact of the matter is that you said at the beginning of the story that the building went through many renovations.
Renovations. Yeah.
Renovations. That's the word. Sorry, it's gone through many renovations, but the fact of the matter is they're still feeling the same spot where he was hanged, right?
Yes.
So why is it that it's gone through all these changes, but it's still that one particular spot that's kind of reoccurring?
Nice.
Wine or no wine?
All right. All right. Yeah, I would argue that it is in Napa Valley where the wine is being made. It doesn't need to be in that particular spot. It is Napa Valley. But, I mean, I already said my part, so I will not debate that any further.
Very nice of you.
Yeah, exactly. So let's rate the evidence. Rebecca, how would you rate this?
Okay, now that I know, sorry.
The rating system.
The rating system for this one. This one I am going to give a 4. I give a 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's it is Napa Valley, so I get that. But I don't know though. I almost want to say a 3 though, because Bob, you really did push me with the fact that there's been renovations and nothing's changed. So, but all right, I'm gonna go with 4.
All right. Nick, how do you respond?
10.
10. It's
I don't
surprising.
think he's ever going to give a different answer.
Bob, how would you rate this?
A 3.
A 3. Okay, you're sticking with the 3 theme. Okay.
I went 3.5 before. This is a solid.
Oh, you did. You did.
Yes.
That is right. This is a solid 3. So you believe
This
this,
is a
more,
solid 3. This
Yes.
yes. I
or you
believe
believe this less? Actually,
No,
I should say.
to buy
this is
into
a
the.
weird.
I'm sorry. I don't buy into the microclimate thing here as much as.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something else. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I am going to give it another 9. So I'm sticking with the 9 because I did a pretty good job. Okay. So my third piece of evidence, though, has to do with the previous episode, has to do with Alcatraz. Alcatraz is located off of San Francisco Bay, which is known for having numerous microclimates. Now, everyone knows that one of the first signs of a ghost in the area is a cold feeling, right? And we especially know this nowadays because of the movie The Sixth Sense, right? That is when it really came out, you know. But this was something that was well known way before this. What if every story that we heard of in our Alcatraz episode started by them feeling cold? People become more tense and notice things more in an area known for such a spooky history. And then you add on that cold spot, it means that they might have thrown logic out the window after such a shuddering experience. And it could have all been known as the San Francisco microclimates. Rebecca, how would you respond to that?
Okay, so you're just making kind of more of like a blanket argument using Alcatraz as an example
Yes.
of when if someone's in a situation where they know it was spooky and they feel cold, then
Yes.
those two things will make them more likely to believe that
Yes.
they're experiencing paranormal things. Okay, so I don't think that that's true. I don't think that being cold makes you think more paranormal thoughts. For me, I mean, especially Alcatraz specifically, see our Alcatraz episode, people heard things and saw things. It really wasn't just about feeling cold. So I don't know. I mean, I think people see ghosts in cold and in hot climates. So I don't know that the temperature is going to change whether or not people see paranormal things.
But that is one of the first ways that you know that a ghost is around, right? Is that you start to feel cold. That's known.
It can be. It's not yeah.
Okay. All right, Nick, how would you respond?
Well, Alcatraz is like the perfect storm for microclimates. Let's be real. It's in the
True.
middle of San Francisco Bay. It's very rocky, and its terrain goes up and down a lot. The buildings are stone and steel and all of these different building materials. It's been patchworked together at different points in times. It's not all built at the same time. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of wind. Also, talking about hearing things and seeing things, wind makes sounds when it goes through things that can be confused. And there is something to say about if you're somewhere where something big has happened or something that has that human meaning to it, you do feel some sort of resonance. And if you're feeling that and you hear some weird sound, the human imagination is an amazing thing. It's very easy to put those together and start to believe that you're hearing something specific.
Wow. All right, Bob, are you ready to follow that up?
I am, but it's not going to be the answer you're expecting from me.
What?
No. As far as microclimates with Alcatraz, I'm actually with Nick on that one.
What?
Just on the
never
microclimate,
happened.
just on the microclimate argument alone,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
of the other signs that go on there. It's not necessarily the cold spots that make people believe it's haunted. It's everything else. It's the banging on the walls. It's the ghostly, see what I did there? The ghostly
Mhm.
yelling in the distance, the weeping and the other stories that go on there. I don't buy, whenever I do an investigation, and I paranormal investigate with Bob After Dark, it goes hand in hand. Whenever I investigate an area, I always look at where I'm at, what I'm doing, and the history of the place, right? If I'm on an island in the middle of a bay where I know that the temperature fluctuates as microclimate, I know I'm not going to buy into cold spots being a presence, right? I'm going to have to rely on other things to kind of guide me into the direction it's haunted or not. So because of the microclimates and stuff, I can't buy into it because it's 100% microclimate filled, no pun intended. And that if you wanted to buy into that there is a spirit there, right? And you were doing something with a cold spot, it's really hard to judge, is that cold spot a microclimate because I'm literally surrounded by them, or is it a spirit? So I'm going with, on this one, 100%, yeah, you can't argue about the cold spots in Alcatraz because the entire place is potential for cold spots.
All right. So I have nothing to say after that for some reason. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
So let's go ahead and rate it. Rebecca, how would you rate this evidence?
I don't know. It's a hard one to rate because we're sort of talking about Alcatraz, but your argument is really more not just about Alcatraz. So I don't really know what to say. I'm going to give it a 5 because I think, again, I don't necessarily think that a microclimate is always going to make somebody believe in something, but I do think that, Bob, you make a good point that we should be careful if we're doing ghost investigations, that if it is a place known to have extreme microclimates or whatever, that you should always take microclimate into your consideration, exactly, because it might cancel out a piece of evidence that you think you have. So I'll say a 5. Like sometimes it might mean something,
right.
Sometimes it might not.
Nick, do we have to ask?
10.
What? Okay. I knew that was coming. It just surprised me how you did it. So, Bob, what would you say?
I'm going with a 5 as well.
See?
Even though you totally agreed with Nick.
Because no, listen, the reason being is because it's hard. You're like Rebecca said, you're making an argument for Alcatraz, not for the microclimate, I guess.
Yeah.
So if I was to, let's say I'm in the middle of a cell, and I'm going to be brief about it. Let's say I'm in the middle of a cell and I experience some anomalies around me, and then I start feeling a little cold because of it. The other anomalies are coming first, and then maybe I'll realize the temperature. I'll pay attention to things around me first that I'm actually able to measure or whatever, and then I'll look at the climate of where I'm at. So I'm going with a 5 just based on the other evidence that goes on there. In a situation like Alcatraz, microclimates come second and the cold spots come second. I have to hear other things or see other things before I decide whether or not it is or it isn't. So a 5.
All right. So what I'm going to say before I give my rating is that so you start off by having this historic place that's known for a lot of bad stuff, and then you add in that you have cold spots all around there. Those are 2 things right there that might set you off and then might make the other things seem more realistic to you than they actually are. So I'm going to give this one a 10. I'm with Nick.
Whoa!
Ooh.
You thought you did amazing, huh?
I did really, really good explaining this point. So for my 4th and final piece of evidence, I would like to use my ghost story of Monk's Castle, which was a true story that actually happened to me. Was the cold air that I felt there just a microclimate? Now, just some thoughts about this. The monks are a childhood urban legend, as these are Catholic priests, not monks, but I've gone back there several times during the day and felt that same chill, even in the middle of summer. I say it's a microclimate. The church is in the middle of a forest preserve, and I think with all the trees there are certain shaded areas that could contain their own microclimate. So, Rebecca, what would you have to say about that?
So I guess I have a question. So in this case, right, this is where, even if you're a believer in the paranormal, you have to pay attention to what's happening around you. So when you felt the cold spot, or when you felt the cold spot, is it just that one little square foot that you're standing that you feel the cold?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
Do you see a shadow on the ground around you, like there's shade from a tree or from a building?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that no matter where the sun's at, I still feel a little bit colder there, just
Like
slightly colder.
in the whole place, or just in
Yes.
one spot in the place?
Just in one spot in that place.
So I mean, like, I'm sorry. So we're talking about the cemetery. Is the whole cemetery feel cold?
No, no,
one
just that
spot?
one place that I felt it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'd want to do some investigating. That seems,
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't think of a reason that it would be colder than the area around it, then that seems a bit, I don't know. It seems interesting to me.
And this is a known haunted area. That's what people would claim about Monk's Castle or St. James of Sag Bridge.
Mm.
It's St. James Catholic Church by Sag Bridge or something like that. That's what the name is really. But Monk's Castle is a known haunted area. It's on Archer Avenue, which is one of the most haunted streets in the world even.
Check out our Resurrection Mary episode if you haven't.
First
yet.
episode, yeah.
Mhm.
So Nick, how would you respond to this?
So I have a question about a couple questions actually. First,
Yes.
the topography of the cemetery, is it very flat, or is it
No.
it has dips and stuff in it?
No, it's on a hill, and so it's always one side is always going to be lower than the other.
Okay.
And
then my other question is I know that you weren't always a skeptic. When you first visited, were you a skeptic at that time, or were you?
No. I was 100% believer.
Okay. And here's why I asked that, because obviously feeling changes and like that, you can predispose yourself to try to feel things like that if you're looking for something, which Bob mentioned before. You can get that in your head. The other thing is this idea of sense memory. You have a very strong memory of this spot and feeling it show there, and then having to run a fear response, a fight or flight response, which is going to create a very strong sense memory. So when you return to that spot, even if there's not a shadow there at that time, you may still feel that sense memory and bring up that cold spot in your mind.
Interesting. I didn't think of that. Bob, how would you respond to this?
Actually, I was following suit with Nick again. As a paranormal investigator, part of my job is to understand what was going on at the time and how was your mental state at the time. Not are you crazy or you're not, but
I was crazy. I mean,
how old were you? Or were you?
I would say I was 17, 18 years old.
So you went in there completely well aware of the situation that you're going into a haunted cemetery, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've heard of Monk's Castle, right?
I've been there.
Yeah,
I've been there. I've investigated St. James a couple times, and that place is eerie. I will give it that 100%. More afraid of some monk coming out and beating on me, I guess, but but no, the thing about it is, like, there's more things going on there than meets the eye, right? Microclimates is such one small section in the array of questions I have to look into or things I have to research or study to figure out what's going on. So the climate itself is just one thing. And in your situation, you're a younger kid going in looking for a thrill, more or less, and there you might be more susceptible to believe into that. But to Rebecca's point, is it the one spot? Because I know kind of where that spot is that you're referring to, because I felt that same cold spot there. And even
What?
Yeah, true story. I've been there, and I have an idea of right where you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Yes, is it a hill? Sure. And yes, is there a potential for a microclimate to be there? But it's really strange to have the one spot there and you pick up on it.
I think it's interesting.
Have you gone back since you've been a skeptic?
Yes, to that exact spot, no. But I have.
Let's go back. I want to take you now, and I want to see if you pick up on it still.
Yeah,
social
so you guys are
distancing.
talking about the same place.
Yeah.
Churches are closed right now, actually.
Oh, well, okay.
Well,
so,
once this distancing thing is over.
Yeah. I guess,
but I think it's funny, though, that you start off by saying, I completely agree with Nick, but then you go the complete opposite way that Nick did.
Because that's the thing, Mike. It's so hard to argue the microclimate thing, right?
yeah.
Right?
That is one of the. It's just in the levels of things that I'm a believer in, and that I go in being like, oh, that's great. And when I go and investigate a spot, is one, like the bottom of the barrel of things I'm gonna tend to believe in. One is spirit photography as far as orbs, and then
Right.
above that would be microclimates, cold spots, because those are easily that's the word I'm using. Easily, that's my word I'm using. Those are easily explained, right? So that's why I agree with Nick, but in the same regard, it's hard to. There's so much I could go into about it. We don't have time for it, but there's so much
No,
you
we
can argue
don't.
for the spots of these places. So yes, it's easy to agree with you skeptics on these points because yeah, you're completely right. But in the same regard, there's other things that go into it, and why I still follow that same path because there's more questions to be asked. From a microclimate standpoint, absolutely, they could be absolutely just a microclimate. But at the end of the day, there's other things going on that could explain it. Once this social distancing's over, we're going back to St. James's. Here's how you feel now.
All right. So what did you say your rating was? We were doing No, we were just doing responses. So let's do our
Yes.
ratings then. So Rebecca, how would you rate this?
This is hard. I'm actually gonna give it a 4. I like. There's just something about the fact that now that Bob says he also has felt this cold spot that like definitely makes me a little bit more of a believer in it. And I guess my question too. I was just thinking about it. So it's on a hill. It's like in that case, I would expect it would get colder as you go down the hill. But you're not saying that. You're saying that just this one spot is cold. So
One
I don't
spot.
know. It's just really hard to not think that might be something.
Yeah. All right, Nick, what do you think?
Actually, I would use Bob's evidence of feeling it as proof that there's definitely an ability to have a microclimate there. So I'm going to give it a 9 plus 1.
Oh,
10. Oh, wow. I see. That's you using math against us here. Math is my enemy. So, Bob, how would you rate this?
3.
Okay, I'm going to abstain from voting on this, rating this, because it was me that was there. So,
Okay.
but let's do an overall rating, though, on everything. Rebecca, how would you rate this whole thing?
Whole thing of microclimates. So the
Microclimates. So the question, though,
yeah. What's
is
the question?
let me see, is some paranormal evidence really just microclimates? And how would you rate this?
Well, I mean, so the way you've worded the question means that it has to be like I have to say an 8, because yeah, sure, some paranormal evidence could be microclimates, of course.
Okay. But we went over this beforehand. It's not like I didn't tell you what the question was and
no, actually,
figure
you
it out
didn't.
with you.
You did not.
And I sent you my script
Okay, that
yesterday.
you did do. You did do that part.
So for you to say this now is like, okay.
No, I mean, no, no, it's the right question to ask. I think that it's important to say that
on Skeptic Day.
On Skeptic Day that it is an 8, because while there might be certain instances where I can say like, well, no, this whole thing or whatever, but sure, absolutely, we have to be open to the fact that any piece of particular paranormal, I'm trying to get the P's in there, paranormal evidence can be a microclimate.
All right. Nick, what is your overall rating?
I also feel like I've been hoodwinked by this. No, 10.
10. Okay. Bob, what would you say your overall is?
as a believer,
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly tell you 100% without a doubt that not every ghost story turns out to be true. Sometimes they turn out to be a loose wire in the house, or sometimes they turn out to be a microclimate. And because you worded this question as sometimes do they turn out to be a microclimate, sometimes I'm going with an 8.5.
Wow.
An 8.5. So, okay. So Bob, what is one story that you would say definitely is not a true ghost story, or is not real?
I don't buy into the theater thing only because I know the story that went in behind it. I mean, the interior, at least the alley, I haven't been inside the interior of the theater. I've never investigated inside. I've never been in there, but at least that alley story.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Were you shocked when she said that it was all made up?
Oh my God, I was.
I was too.
What are you doing?
Rebecca, were you shocked?
I was,
Which-
yeah. Mhm.
Now,
Especially
Nick,
'cause
I know
had
you weren't
stuff
there for
happen.
that, so but yeah, she came clean and said that it was all made up by her.
But
Yeah.
then continued to say that she's seen a lot of
Stories,
evidence
that's
since
the
then.
thing. At least for the alley, and
Mhm.
I mean, maybe there's spooky stuff that goes on in that alley, but the one particular story about the cigarette thing, that's the one where I'm like, nope, not buying into it. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing though. Could you say that any spot is haunted and present evidence to say that it was? Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, that's the thing. You can make up a spot and it could turn out to people believe that it's haunted. So,
was that an argument for believers, Pat, coming from your mouth?
no, it's actually contrary to that. It's a very skeptic idea that any idea we can come up with for a show topic is there's going to be people that believe that there's ghosts there.
Oh,
Mhm.
I misunderstood. I apologize.
Yeah. So, okay, that brings us to our closing arguments. This is our last chance to convince you to vote our way. We are each given 1 minute of uninterrupted time. We will time each other on our cell phones to keep each other honest. Rebecca, did you want to go first since I did the whole announcement thing again?
Sure.
Okay, so I have my cell phone out
Okay.
and I have 1 minute on the clock. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, and go.
All right. So I do think that microclimates can often be an explanation for paranormal activity. So you have to be careful when you're doing investigations that you pay attention to the buildings, to the sun, to the topography, all of those 6 things that we talked about. I think they'll make you a stronger investigator. I think that they will help your belief if you can pay attention to the climate that's around you, and come up with ways to either dismiss that as an option, or ignore it and look for other evidence. I think that's going to make you a stronger investigator. So while I can't say that microclimates are never going to be the answer, because they will be, I actually think that knowledge gives us power as believers. Done.
You still have 6 seconds left.
I know. I finished early for
All right.
once.
Okay, so, all right. Did you want to time all of us then?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So I think Bob should go next.
What? No, it's
What?
Nick's
No, that makes-
turn.
All right,
We have to go in
Nick.
order.
I just had it in my notes that Bob was going next. So,
Oh,
Nick,
in my
go
notes
ahead.
it says Nick, so.
Okay.
All
Do-
right.
Is
Oh,
the
I
timer
guess not.
started?
Okay, sorry. All right, you ready, Nick?
Yeah, sure.
And go.
So here's the thing: microclimates exist all over the place. We know this. And when people talk about, well, if somebody feels the same thing in that same spot, then that's proof that it might not be a micro. That's the opposite. If a spot is, vulnerable to being a haven for a microclimate, which is very likely, then the more people that feel it there, the more likely it is a microclimate. Also, I've been to a lot of the places that we've talked about or similar places and felt the microclimates, and have never felt or noticed anything else that is evidence for a ghostly presence. And then finally, the last thing is ghosts don't exist. So that's all I need. Mic drop.
You're done. All right.
Yeah, you could drop your mic. It's your own mic, so you can drop it if you
Yeah,
want.
that's on you.
All right. So should Bob go next then?
Bob should go next then.
All right.
All right.
Bob, are you ready?
I am.
Okay,
All right.
and go.
Not every ghost story turns out to be a haunting. Not every bump in the night turns out to be a bump in the night. Sometimes it's a squirrel in the walls, sometimes it's loose wiring, sometimes it's soil problems with water or whatever it might be. And that goes the same for a cold spot. Not every cold spot turns out to be a ghost. Sometimes it may just end up being a microclimate. Now, with that said, doesn't mean that I'm jumping ship to the skeptic side. It just means that I'm a person who believes in logic. Mic drop.
Okay.
Wow.
None of us need the full time today.
I might need it.
I would say Pat might need it. Okay.
All right.
Because he's doing really well today. So, all right.
Okay.
Well, that's what you've been saying, that you've been doing a good job. So.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing with me, though.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
All right. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Go.
I was on a ghost tour once where we went to a mansion And I was standing right next to a woman that said that she experienced a cold spot, and it was while there was like an EVP or whatever going on. And I was like right next to her, and I was sweating. So I know for sure that she was not feeling that, and there was no ghost around there. Microclimates can be a starter drug into the paranormal idea, that they can add to that eerie feeling. And then given that a place might have some historical relevance to people dying in it, I believe that we are predisposed to then feel that there should be something going on there. And then our minds just fill in the gaps to make us believe these things. I'm not saying anyone's a liar. I'm just saying that it's a misunderstood idea. And microclimates are real.
Oh.
Finished.
Well said.
That was
Yeah,
good.
thank you. So I want to thank all of you guys for listening or watching. Please share us with your friends and family, as word of mouth is our best form of advertisement. I'd also like to thank Nick and Bob for coming on Ghostly. Nick, what do you have going on?
Oh, I've got a bunch of stuff going on. I'm still producing Freak of the Week, even though I'm not on it. Memoriam Development, which I'm the executive director of, we had a bunch of, stage or, live shows scheduled that unfortunately have been postponed. But we've been doing live streaming and videos on YouTube. So check us out, Memoriam Development. Find us on Facebook. That's where we share all of that stuff.
Now, as the producer of Freak of the Week, you had a guest on just recently, right? Your last episode.
Yeah, our last episode, actually, if you've ever listened to the show, Dr. David Hickney has his counterpoint, kind of like Pat and Rebecca are their own counterpoints. David Hickney has his sister, Dr. Elizabeth Marin, as his counterpoint, and she was absent for the episode. And so instead he brought in the hosts of Ghostly to talk about the ghost of Dave Coulier.
And we have a clip. Do you want to tell us anything about this clip before we play it?
So this is towards the beginning of the episode, and it's literally just talking about the ghost of Dave Coulier and how it exists.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, but it's they're out there. Malcolm Jamal Warner, I believe he has a ghostly presence out there. Tiffany Amber Thiessen. Yeah. So it's one of those things that
once their career dies.
It's you can often find their ghostly presence around. That's how they keep their energy.
Okay. That's interesting.
So you're buying this then?
I decide at the end of the episode if I believe or not.
Well, we let our listeners decide. So you can decide too.
Yeah, I'm going to decide.
By voting in the poll.
Well, yeah, because we're on my show, so I'm going to decide.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we could take a poll on here,
Yeah, we'll take a poll of one.
Yeah, we usually will rate we will say how much we believe it on a scale from 0 to 10.
So normally, like me talking about my decision, the skeptic that's normally on is just like, okay, David.
Oh,
no,
okay.
he's not like that.
No,
he will
not
fight
at all.
you.
God, why are you so aggressive towards people that believe?
I'm not aggressive, actually. I like people that believe.
I mean, it seems
I want to believe.
He
It
says
seems
that,
like you're
but he
very
doesn't.
aggressive towards people that believe. Like, you should be nicer.
Okay, so what should I do to be nicer?
Be like, okay, David.
Okay, David.
Thank you.
Whatever
Awesome.
you say.
Oh, so you guys...
Wow, I could never get him to do that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a doctor. I guess that's probably why.
Wow.
Oh, yeah,
that
he is a
must be
doctor.
it.
Yeah, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I've got a doctor.
so you
from
have to
MIT.
believe someone that's a doctor a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's-
yeah. Again,
see
I think he's right. There is his ghost is out there.
Yeah, it seems like it. And
It's
like,
totally not.
why you got to be like that?
Because it's just not.
He's got to go. The ghost of David Coulier is
I
out
have
there.
several sightings that we can talk about.
Because
Several.
Several sightings of the
Several.
ghost of Dave Coulier.
Okay, wait, hold on. Hey Siri, is David Coulier still alive?
Oh, wow. So, yeah, they're going to have to find out what Siri said. I don't even remember what Siri said about that.
I don't remember either because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you should have been
obviously
there.
Pat has
Yeah.
a more antagonistic relationship with Hickney than he does with you, Nick.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, me and Nick get along.
Right.
I don't know about him.
yeah.
But Hickney kind of sounds like you a little bit too, just
What
like
is
you know,
that?
No, he sounds
like
different. He sounds
like
different.
if you were like if you smoked like a carton of cigarettes or something before recording.
That's crazy.
And his energy's a little different though too.
Mhm.
I would just say, yeah. All right, Bob, what do you got going on?
Before I do mine, just real briefly, I'm imagining in my head Hickney and Nick here being the yin and yang of the paranormal, with Nick being super skeptic and Hickney being like super, believer. But I digress.
Oh, I would love
What-
to see that episode. That would
Yeah,
be
right.
cool.
Anyway, what do I have going on other than my normally broadcasted episodes? Nothing. All my convention appearances have been canceled over the next 6 months. So it's.
Well, you've been going live though, right?
I've
On
been
Facebook?
going live, so I'm still doing the live show. I'm my studio's closed, so I'm still doing it right from my office. I'm doing live streams every other day. I'm calling them spooky chats. They're quick segments that wouldn't make an entire hour episode of my show. So if there's like a smaller ghost story, or the other day I had some fans write in about like family cultured monsters that they used to scare their kids with. So I
Nice.
talked about that a
Oh.
little bit.
Nice.
Like the boogeyman and
Yeah, and there was the squish squish monster, which is an old Naples.
What?
Yeah, it's an English translation. It's not onomatopoeia.
Ah.
Mm.
So, and there was a monster that these grandmas would tell their kids in Naples about this
Wow.
monster that would come and get them in the rain. So, I mean, I do stuff like that. The
Wow.
podcast is still going strong. My newest episode just came out Friday, which was from when I did the recording with you guys at C2E2. But the week before that, I had a very familiar voice on the episode. Some guy with a beard came on and talked to me about the Tooth Fairy.
Nick?
No, you.
Oh, me? What?
Yeah, you were on that one.
Yeah,
So,
I was.
I'm still
That
doing
was
the
fun.
Yeah, it was. So I'm still doing the podcast and I'm still doing live streams. You can find out about all of that at bobafterdark.com. That'll redirect you and give you everything that you need to know about what's going on when in my life.
For now, at least.
For now, at least. And then hopefully everything will go back to normal soon and I could be back on the road, because I miss you guys. I miss being at cons and I miss being able to talk to my fans.
And being in person and stuff. It's weird, you know?
It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. So I just want to end this episode by telling everybody to please be safe and please be well.
Oh, well, thank you, Bob. So I want to thank you guys for sticking it out through this episode, and we will be talking about Jack the Ripper on the next episode that
Ooh.
comes out on April 15th, which would have been tax day, but it's no longer tax day.
That's true. And I also want to mention so Nick, you talked about with Memoriam doing a lot of live stream, and Bobby doing some live stream. Ghostly's going to try to do maybe not live stream, but we are going to try to do some videos and some fun stuff while we're all sitting at home, try to come up with some content for you. So I'm excited to get working on that this next week. So we're going to be, in case you guys didn't know, we do a Walking Dead podcast. You may have heard something about that this episode already, and that's going to be ending soon. So we're going to have some more time on our hands to create a lot more ghostly content. I'm excited to do that. So Jack the Ripper is going to be amazing, and hopefully we'll have some more spooky content for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
All
So
right.
stay ghostly.
Stay ghostly.
Stay
I
skeptic.
can't say it.
You gotta say bye.
Bye.